anxiety I have waiting for this thing to connect can't be good for my health at all. But we are going to hope that
It should work. I was
I'm
I was at a previous one when you shit, I cannot remember who was on it, but I was on one and I think it worked pretty fine. It was on YouTube, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I screamed to you too. And it looks like it came through. That actually came through very fast. So really happy with that.
Yeah.
And we are only 1 minute from official kickoff. But what I'm going to do is ask anyone who joins to drop where they're calling in from in the chat. So, oh wait, I said I wasn't going to type and have my thing on right. So I've got to mute myself while I type. Everyone, we're going to kick off in just 2 seconds. Once it clicks over to past, then we're going to get going.
No, that sounds good. Mina, where are you based, by the way?
Actually in Dubai, but right now in Madrid.
Madrid, nice.
Madrid is a really nice city. We had a sales kickoff there, and oh my God, I underestimated this. I'm always this Barcelona fan boy. I don't know, but Madrid is really nice as well.
Yeah, I kind of fell in love with the city, and let's see where we're heading to next year.
Nice, really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I love Spain. It's beautiful, and it's probably much warmer than where I am here in Berlin. So,
but the weather is not too bad. Look at this. It's like
I know today it's actually got there's sun and there was blue skies.
here.
Right? Can you see it?
Look at this. Nice.
You know what I'm talking about? Berlin is great.
Yes, yes.
Like the first day in. I don't know how long, but it's actually nice in Berlin. Okay, we are going to kick off now. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is another Stacked webinar coming to you live over YouTube. So thank you everyone who's on the other side. I can already see some people from Egypt there, from Munich, Saudi Arabia, calling in Stockholm. So we've got people dropping in from all over the place, which is great. Today we're here to talk about something a little bit different. I mean, kind of the same, but kind of different. We hear all about AI hype all the time. Unless you're living under a rock, you only hear about AI probably, especially if you're on LinkedIn or in any kind of like tech business these days. And we want to talk about actually how to think about the end-to-end hiring process and where not to use AI. So rather than saying how we can use it, because I think we've heard that 400 times over, we want to talk about where not to use AI, where we can actually keep the human parts, where we need to think about maybe optimizing in different ways, and where the value is going to be added from our perspective and our experts' perspective in the future. Is going to be very interesting to see how it evolves. So that's what we're here to talk about. Before we jump in, I'm going to introduce, well, they're going to actually introduce themselves, but I'm going to ask everyone to introduce who they are, their background, and we can kick off maybe first with Mina. Mina is actually from, Mina and I used to work together actually back in the day when I was actually in HR. She was working as a recruiter from external recruiter. It was fantastic, and we've kept in touch ever since. And she's actually now not only got her own company with recruiting services, but also her own vendor product, Hi Remi, which is actually sponsoring today. So I very much appreciate you helping us keep these webinars going. So thank you so much. So I'm going to hand over and let Mina introduce herself, and then please pass on to the next expert as well to introduce them.
Sure. Also, thanks, Jessie, for organizing this. I'm very excited for this talk today. I personally believe that since our role as recruiters is changing, it's so important to also talk about, how AI can help us here and where it doesn't. And that's where, as a founder of Hi Remi, which is actually an AI sourcing tool for recruiters, I believe it's really important to also see like where the human touch is coming into. So yeah, just a quick words about me. I'm Mina. Used to do recruiting as on the agency side, in-house, and now also on the software side. And what Remi does is it helps recruiters to shortlist and engage with candidates faster, removing the manual parts of it, especially for roles that require more precision and research. Yeah, that's me. And I would hand over to Matthias.
Hey, everyone. My name is Matthias Schmeißer. I'm a VP of People at emnify, former TA leader, so I can probably give a little bit more of a perspective on, holistically speaking, where I would put this and where not, but also have a lot of passion of TA. So I'm very, very eager to talk today about this topic, and I really love the idea to change the perspective of not where to use AI, but where maybe not to use, right? Because just because we can technically use it doesn't mean we should use it, right? And I think I would hand it over to Mohammed.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. My name is Mahmoud, and I am originally from Egypt, and I moved to the Netherlands around 5 years ago. That's where I live right now. At the moment, I do recruitment for go-to-market at a company called Semrush, and I've been doing talent acquisition for the past 10 years. Started off at agencies, and then I jumped in-house. Kind of wanted to try a little bit of everything, but been very passionate about technology, and currently in the midst of trying a lot of different AI tools and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So can hopefully bring a couple of insights about where are the areas that it's going to be very difficult to use AI, and I highly recommend it not to use it. And thanks, Jessie, for having me.
No, thank you. I mean, I'm so happy to have everyone here. I really wanted this constellation. So I reached out, I was like, hey, do you want to do this? I think this topic would be really cool, because I really do think that it's important to have different perspectives from different people with different life experiences and different exposures can bring, something new to the space. And, Matthias and I actually have known each other, I don't know, a couple of years now as well in Berlin. Really always love when I hear Matthias speak. I love his perspectives. Sometimes they're a little spicy too, which I like as well. And Mahmoud, we met a couple of years ago as well, I think now even. And I just really like how your thought process behind how you think about it. I think you're very systematic, and I really like it. So I'm really interested to hear today how you guys think about this whole topic. Thank you again. And I'm host, whatever, panel moderator, whatever you want to call me. I'm also Jessie, and I am more or less founding Stacked, which is the HR tech database you may or may not have heard. But what I do is also make sure we bring sessions like these to the community, where we bring expert opinion in. You get to see tech, you get to see demos, you get to hear about new things on the market, learn a new skill set potentially. So make sure you check out all the different sessions that we have going on, because I make sure I bring these to you for free so you can learn. And I think collectively, that's the best thing we can do, is learn together, especially at the speed at which everything is changing. I might drop my 2 cents in there, so I apologize if I do, but I might have an opinion that I may drop. And that being said, we're going to kick off with our first question, which is, I think, very on brand with the topic of today. Where in the hiring process should AI have no role at all, and why? Maybe we kick off with, Mahmoud, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny enough, I was actually just at an event last week. It was at the Mira office here in the Netherlands, and it was an event hosted by Matcher. And one of the questions that we were actually filling out when we were signing up to come to the event was exactly this question: what parts of the recruitment process shouldn't be automated or shouldn't be handed over to AI? And we just got the report yesterday, and the first 2 points in the report, I actually have it open here. First point is interviewing and screening calls. It had most of the picks from everybody who filled it out. And second one is candidate experience and human connection. And I think it comes a bit obvious to a lot of people that that's the first thing that you think about when you think about not automating in the process, is the interviews part, the screening parts, the first human touch point. Now, there are some cases to those, and I think there are special cases where you have very high volume roles where, your screening call is basically asking, hey, do you have a visa? What languages do you speak? Are you available at this time? Can you work from that location? These are, I think, very easy to automate at that point, and they normally come with very high volume roles. But then the more you go into, more typical roles where they're not really high volume, the automation part becomes a bit difficult. You can do it, but you really take away from the candidate experience part of it. I've had a couple of, for fun, interviews that were done by a bot. There were just some tools that were being tried on the market, and I tried them, and I don't know if you guys have had them before, but they're absolutely horrible. Basically, think about when you speak to Siri, or think about when you speak to Gemini, for example, when you use the voice option. Imagine in an interview where you have a candidate who's nervous. Interviews are nerve-wracking processes in general. Even if you're a very experienced interviewer, there will come a time where an interviewer could be a bit more tense, or this could be your dream job and you're very nervous about it. Imagine in that case having a Siri or having a Gemini voice saying, "Oh, I understand. Interviews could be scary sometimes." That is not really empathetic enough. That's not really helpful in that situation. I think the empathy part, that's what a recruiter really brings in interviews and screenings and all of those first touch points. That is very, very difficult to be automated or taken away by AI. So that's where also my head immediately goes to when we think about which processes shouldn't be automated. I'll stop here because I have a lot to rant about that topic, but I'll throw it to someone else. Maybe Matthias, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. We should look at candidate experience. I think this is definitely something that even without AI, we haven't really mastered this for years, even though it has been a topic. So I think for me, if you think a little bit more holistic about this, in a sense of, you could now go into this rabbit hole and say, where is hiring failing, literally? Yeah, even before the AI age. And then also, how has this evolved, right? We see different markets. So for example, we see an employer market or employee market, right? So I think what never got lost is the connection to your manager. Like you would have like 3 different offers, and if you don't go for the fancy companies with the big brands, but like literally hidden gems, let's assume the job is really exciting, that's why you actually tried to apply there, or you got reached out and you say, hey, this looks like really a tempting opportunity. The connection with the hiring manager, what they think about good looks like, how they run their team, the stakeholders, the cultural element, maybe even under certain circumstances, we see more on-site interviews happening again, and it's not all remote, right? So I think then at this point, AI has also some limitations on top of that. But I think this is the connection, the cultural part, to just understand, do I want to spend, and we all know how much time we spend at work, do I want to spend the next 2 to 3 years with this human being or with this team or with this idea or this manager together? I think this is something where AI will sabotage this to a certain extent. But I think what is a very interesting part, and I love, Mahmoud, that you point this out, interviews, for example. I think what we keep on seeing is that maybe not so much interviews are automated in the real day-to-day, but you have an AI helping people to make decisions. So what I keep on seeing, for example, with people, and then we should be, now comes the spiciness in, we should maybe see what is a hiring manager responsibility and not. If you have, let's say, certain agents that have certain metrics and criteria settings already on, and literally the person is just uploading the interview that they just had and then gets the recommendation and says yes on this, no on this, and the only thing that you do, spend a good quality time with someone, asking maybe in the best case the right questions, but the assessment itself is then done based on what has been uploaded. Like I see a lot of companies are doing that, and the question is then really, I don't know, right? Like, how much is this then the assessment of AI versus the human assessment? By the way, also maybe a thought-provoking statement, both have biases, right? Let's not kid ourselves. AI has biases, but human beings do too, right? And then the question is, how can you get out of a white man, because they are always the target, right? How to get off a white man all of their biases, or can you actually get off AI more biases? But that's maybe a side conversation. I'd love to hand it over to Mina. Yeah, what your take is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on those points. So we do headhunting, right? So that's my background. And for us, the human connection is the most important part, because we don't do high volume recruitment on writers. We acquire certain people that have a background or a track record And those people are rare in the market, right? So you don't want to blow up your chance by putting an AI interviewing them. So for us is closing and actually making the person trust you and actually kind of fall in love with the company, the mission, what opportunity you have there is as important as qualifying the candidate and making sure that you get the right person in front of your hiring manager. So I would definitely agree on this part as well. I also believe that AI can be a supporter. So I believe that recruiter or us as talent acquisition, we have to be the brain. So I think there's a lot of talking about human in loop and approving a decision, but not enough people talk about how we have to set the frame for the LLM or for the AI. So it's so important that we are the experts and we see each other as experts and we put in our expertise, our frames, our criteria in there so the LLM can just execute on it and not come up with something. So what I have seen in the past are hiring managers or even founders who ask ChatGPT to come up with a job description. So basically just make up what are the tasks of the role. So I also don't believe that that's what AI is used for. I do believe that once you know exactly what you need, like you have a clear plan on your company vision and mission, you have a clear plan on your goals and objectives, then you can use AI to help you to, do headcount planning or to derive positions out of that. But I definitely believe that where you're creating, that should be something that people are accountable for. But when it comes to executing based on your frames, based on your guidelines, then you can automate things with an LLM, and it will be faster and hopefully at the same quality.
Interesting. So I mean, we've all kind of touched on something here, which is the human judgment. Where is human judgment needed? Like, where do you need the human element in all of these steps? Like we create the empathy, we create the trust, we create, we decide, was this assessment by AI good or not? And do we agree with it or not? Like the human judgment is really important, and what humans bring to the process is clearly very important.
Yeah.
But then we see on the other side, we see all these vendors creating products for us, inverted commas, for you, for our, the talent acquisition community, for the businesses to use. And they're not always in alignment with what actually we're saying here, right? Like they're kind of pushing us towards, well, we should be using, more tech for interviews, and we should be, AI-ifying everything. And there's a lot of hype around that. I wonder, how do we handle things when human judgment doesn't align with AI? So we're saying, okay, well, we're going to get assessment. It's going to do these assessment things for us, but then we're going to look at it. How deep do we go? How can we override? Can we override those assessments, and how do we do it? And to what level do we expect TA to, question output? It's always one of these things. It's like, how much, if we're relying on AI and we're supposed to override it at the same time, we'll be able to override it. We will make mistakes. Like Matthias said, we are biased. We maybe will make mistakes. Is that okay? So there's so many questions in my head around that.
Yeah, let's maybe touch on the judgment topic, or the human versus AI judgment. I feel like the industry, what they are designing the AI products for is, you get overwhelmed with thousands and thousands of applications, and we will help you to pin it down to the top 2 to 3, which you then I think this is where the human decision or judgment comes in. Then you say you can take all of the 3, but you will need to make a decision which one you think fits best in the culture, team, whatsoever, right? Whatever you have in mind, or who's the best culture at, let's put it like this. I always have a little bit of a problem talking about culture fit in that sense. But yeah, now it depends a little bit how you define it. So, and overall speaking, I think, the last 5% of the funnel, the very closing end, is where human judgment will not disappear, or assessment, or maybe even gut feeling plays a lot of roles, right? I do think that there are a lot of like also executives, the senior leaders, who are not super well-trained hiring managers. Let's not all assume that all hiring managers are trained, as well as maybe some TA professionals here. And then they make this gut decision, yeah. And I think if we manage from a recruiting perspective to deliver 2 to 3 candidates on a similar good quality level, then I think this is where the job is already taken care of and done. And I think what I would see in terms of overwriting AI decisions. I think also that there is a narrative right now going on that a lot of people, or we get this narrative sold that now you have AI, you don't need to worry about your assessment anymore and your job anymore because it's all automated, right? But like we all know by playing around with AI, critical thinking and social skills or core skills, they are very, very important, and you need to train them and you shouldn't trust them. But I wonder, and this is where I see the risk, I wonder how many AI-supported interviews or transcribed scorecards, how many TA professionals really look at that and not just click submit the scorecard to the ATS system and say, well, as long as I have submitted all my scorecards, I'm fine. But have I really watched the interview again? Have I really went through the scorecard again and really maybe challenged this here or there or fine-tuned this, right? I think this is the part where I think we might need to train people a bit more to become more critical in their thinking. And one last topic, Jess, you mentioned with the rubrics and the systems to execute this. I feel like in the end, even if we have our 3 final candidates, I think the achievement is to say they are all on a similar high quality level. And then really this cultural part kicks in and really this, okay, let's put this into context. Because I think with rubrics, you cannot display to 100% what culture really looks like. I mean, you can do this with a value-based approach, et cetera, but there's a certain limitation. I think this is which we cannot display and where the human element kicks in again, because, you might be communication, effective communication looks different to different companies, yeah, or to different people. And they might be great, but to a certain extent, we might need a little bit more of an introverted person versus an extroverted person, or like fine little things like that maybe even our personality profiles, traits. I think this is then something where this will play bigger role.
I like that. Also because at the end of the day, it's people working with people, right? And so you don't want I don't think anyone wants an AI, deciding on those kind of, human interaction and human feelings that you get with people. So yeah, very interesting. Anyone else have comments on this?
I'll honestly just second everything that Matthias has already said, but I'll just want to reference what you already said before. I think AI is as good as you prompt it, right? So if you're a biased person, the AI will be biased because it just feeds off what you ask it to do. So if you have a note taker and it should take notes based on a scorecard that you give it, based on some data, on some notes or bias that you give it, that, for example, if someone is, I don't know, from a certain country should have a higher score. I don't think people do that, but I'm just saying an extreme example to make it clear. The results in the end, the judgment in the end will be biased. In that case, do we blame the AI tool or do we blame the recruiter? You just blame the bias and the origin of it. So, AI tools are great. They're amazing. They're transformative, but it's also, it's as good as you make it. So it pretty much comes from you. I say, obviously, when judgments are in difference, human judgment always wins. But I think it's also good to kind of understand, why is there a gap? Is there a gap because I'm, as a recruiter, am I biased, or do I actually see something real that an AI tool or a machine can never see because it's just not a human? I think that's where the difference comes, and it's always good to question. But Matthias also said a great thing. Are you, you're just using a note-taking tool to take notes? My scorecards are ready, and that's it. I did my job. Or do you actually go back and review yourself and also see how good you did. If there's something that you're lacking, or if you were biased towards something, it's also good to kind of be self-aware about how you use the tool as well.
And on this topic, sorry, Mina, just to double down on him really quickly, because I have to say, and this is also something that maybe recruiters need to be aware of, is we are biased as well, right? So don't just say everyone else is biased, but we are not, because we are doing this all the time. Yeah, I had 2 or 3 moments recently where I put first impressions, weighted my judgment after I came out of the talk, before I watched this again, and then I was realizing, oh, I spent so much time in my assessment about this person on such a tiny thing, while actually the interview was so much more. And if I would have just submitted my scorecard, I would have really made a biased decision. And so that's why I just want to say this is really, really important to challenge yourself as well, based on, if you need to summarize after an interview, what do you see, and then see what actually the interview says. I think this will be a great learning opportunity for people. Sorry, Mina, for interrupting.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree on that. And I believe it's not only in interviewing, it starts actually even much earlier on that. I do have a funny story. One of our recruiters was using our tool to shortlist candidates, and one of the candidates that came up, she knew them. So she knew that this person does not have a certain skill. So she was very surprised that this person was even shortlisted. But when she took a look at the summary and then back a look at the CV, she saw that in her interview, she was not touching this topic, but the candidate did have exactly the experience that she was looking for. So her first reaction was I actually don't trust this because it's not right. But after a small investigation, she just found out that actually there was something that she was missing on it, right? So I think it's right now so important to train people on being self-aware and double checking things, because if the judgment of AI is the same as yours, I think that's easy, right? So there is no need to double check everything, even if you're aligned with the judgment. I mean, it would, it wouldn't be as efficient as it should be. But if you're not aligned, it's so important to really dig deep and then think of, okay, is it me? Is it the AI? Is there any reason why there is this misalignment coming from? And if the outcome of this is that you have to change your prompt, I think even that's a learning enough. But at least, what is the reason why we are not aligned on our assessments, and how can we improve on that? Or did I miss on something? Because as Matthias said, we are human. We have biases too, right? So I definitely think that we do have to keep the human in the loop. We do have to double check, and then we have to train now people on thinking critically and really digging deeper once something is misaligned.
Yeah, I agree on that. We're definitely on the understanding the new scope of the role. So where AI will take over, what is training them on what that is, especially every company will be different, what elements are AI-ified, so to speak, and what is still the role of the recruiter, and where do you add the human value? Because that's how you can show your value to a company as well. Like, where does that human stay? And I think there's so many places it can stay. If we think about, from what you guys have said, it's like, candidate experience, first touch points, interviewing, not everything taking AI, right? Using it to enhance and to be faster, but still keeping that thread of human along that journey of interviewing. And of course, in final decisions, a lot more higher touch points, right? When it comes to, more specialized roles, etc., low volume roles. And I think there's probably a sliding scale in every company, how much of that or less of that is done, right? Mahmoud, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add just a last note. Might be relevant, but I want to make sure I say it. So it also depends on what tools do you use. And I think I can't remember, sorry who, but someone said also it's about how much do you want to automate in the process, and is it just for the sake of automating it and saving time, or is it actually working? I'm now really trying any tool I can, even just personally, not with the company, because I really want to test out a lot of stuff and just build use cases. Basically, a tool, and I'm not going to name obviously which tool it is, but it's a video interviewing tool with AI. So you do I get some questions, I answer them on a video, and then it analyzes it on the back end for the recruiter. I tried it as a candidate, and then I saw the results. I kid you not, I was sitting on my couch, I ran the interview, I got the questions, and I answered them in the most uninterested way, as if yeah, I'm a recruiter and I did this and I did that, blah 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 blah. But I spoke good English, and I told my story, or I explained my experience, but I said it in a very uninterested way. Unfortunately, I don't have the report in front of me, but I think an hour later, I got the report as the recruiter seeing the candidate. It was like, oh, this candidate is great and has this self-awareness and communication skills are great. And I was like, guys, what the hell? Yeah, I was horrible in the interview. I said the right things, but the non-verbal cues, the verbal cues that, it's not just about the content of what you say, it's about how you say it. It was really, really bad. If I'm just, hey, I'm looking at the top scored candidates, I'll probably just push this person forward. But if you put a human in front of me, I would most definitely be rejected. So it'll also you just really need to try what you're using and just not use whatever you find on the market because it's cool and it's shiny and it's going to save you 30-40% of your time and whatever those companies say on the website.
Totally agree. Now we are running out of time very rapidly. 1 minute left. I know you have to jump, Mahmoud, right on the dot, but I really want to ask this last question to Matthias and Mina at least. Where will TA spend the most of its time in the future in TA? Where does it need to be spending most of the human time? And not just judgment, but in which stages are we spending the most time, and where is the value add? Just high level, if you can drop it, because that's what I wanted to ask at the end.
Matthias, you want to take it? And by the way, I have 30 minutes left, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
To make sure.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you had to drop super soon, and I was like, no.
No, all good.
Yeah, good.
So where do people spend the most time? I think, and that's maybe more a subjective view because of my recruiters and the situation that we are in the company. But I think I would argue that hand-holding with hiring managers, educate them on the every day to day, right, is something, you can call it talent advisory, but also interaction with hiring managers. That is something that takes a bit of time. And then it depends on which kind of volume role you have in terms of scheduling, right? I think it's still somehow decent enough on our end, but if I would ask my recruiter, they would be like, yes, give us a tool, please, this is annoying. But again, I always judge a little bit the calendar hygiene, right? Because a lot of this is also due to humans that block calendars that are unorganized, and then the best tool will have a problem with this, yeah. And then last but not least, I think also it's sourcing, yeah. I do think that that there's also a lot of time spent from my recruiters on the sourcing piece and finding the right talent. And I still remember back in the days where sourcing was a master art of there are only so many people who can be so technical and can really find the unique talents around the world on the platforms. And right now you hear this is all automated, this role does not exist anymore, it's all gone. But I'm not a sourcing expert, right? But I think this is the areas where I see that a lot of my recruiters spend a lot of time on. And I think that not the talent advisory, the managing hiring managers, that will still stay. But I think scheduling and sourcing and all the likes, I think there we will probably see some more automation or AI opportunities. At least we are working there with AI on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to add on this. So I think as someone who has built a sourcing tool with AI, I definitely agree that I don't believe in fully automated sourcing approaches and outreach approaches. I think this is where you lose so much potential in your conversions and in your outcome, because I do believe that the manual and admin part of it, that can be automated, and that's where the recruiter should step in and think of a product manager and think of how to build their expertise in to automate what wastes their time, but do not fully step out of the process. They have to be in there and especially put in the human connection into this approach, right? So we talked earlier about how important it is to have this human connection. And even when it comes to sourcing, there's some certain touch points and some certain parts of your outreach or your sourcing which show the candidate that you are a human being, that you're authentic, that you're personal. And that's where the part I believe that the recruiters are still masters, I would say, are actually mastering art when they're doing it right. So that's my take on sourcing. But I would also add that stakeholder management is definitely something where AI will never be able to do it as a human. And the least expected part, I would say, but the most important when it comes to actually talent acquisition is the little check-ins that you do with candidates in between the interview steps. So not necessarily just the interviews or the big touch points, but once you just grab your phone, you call the candidate and you ask them, how are you? Prep them for the next interview, just to check in and build this trust, this connection between them. This is something that no AI tool involved will be able to make it as effective as a human being can do it through the process. So I believe that even this little tiny part makes at least 80% of the success of hiring a candidate, even if they're qualified or everything else is right. But if you're missing on that, you might lose the candidate at the end.
Can I, Mina, double down on this a bit? Because I would love to understand sourcing. For example, let's say I reach out to someone, or I have my target lists somewhere, the people, and I'm reaching out to them. And now I would have a sourcing assistant, which is labeled also as assistant and really displayed that, hey, this is not Matthias talking, this is the assistant, to save Matthias a little bit of time, but somebody, raised a couple of questions and concerns. How ready are candidates to interact with this assistant? Or would they be like, no, give me Matthias on the line, because I don't want this assistant to talk with them about stuff like that, because I don't trust it, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Like I still remember somebody mentioned here a note-taking tool. When we implemented this note-taking still in some regions in Europe, we're like, what is this? What is going on?
Already.
Nowadays, there is like, this is common sense. Everybody knows about this, is used to it. You even probably not disappointed, but distracted by it if nothing happens. No note taker is there, right? But like, I'm trying to understand this a bit, this assistant feature. What is your feedback there? How do candidates react on this?
Yeah, I've been speaking to some founders who have been building such tools where they automate the entire outreach. And then when it comes to the responses, they say like, hey, do you want to talk with our AI assistant on your schedule? And after that, the response rate drops because the candidates are not ready. So maybe there are roles where people are ready to talk to an AI agent and go through that process. But even if your outreach message feels like AI, people won't respond. So that's why I don't even believe in personalizing messages with AI, because at the end, we as human, we can read it. So if I see a message or a post which is entirely written by an LLM, I can, with the first sight, I know this is not a human behind it. It's an LLM, and the response rates drop. So that's why I would actually recommend maybe using an LLM for ideas or drafts, but the last refinement of the outreach and the point where you're actually talking to the candidate, this should not be fully automated, because that's where you lose candidates, especially the good ones.
Yeah, but it's interesting that whole LinkedIn is LLM based now. Like everybody uses AI and nobody is really expressing in their post the human aspect. So we are already getting so much used to this AI polished kind of version of people that, express themselves. And I have to say, if you actually take the time and even make errors or make it a bit more human, it increases the authenticity on this regard, right? But a lot of us are believing that branding, personal branding, build this up, is something AI can do for us and create the content
Absolutely.
strategy, right?
Totally not into the AI doing personal
Yeah.
branding. Being someone who just built my business off personal branding on LinkedIn,
I
I
know.
mean, really, it takes a lot of effort to write actually from you as a person.
Yeah.
Sure, no blank page. Of course, you use AI to kind of help yourself to ideate. I do that. But everything I look at, it gives you garbage. You're like, even if you give tone of voice instructions, it's like garbage. And then really to really make that human side of things, you have to spend time. And that's the same with recruitment. I mean, it's the same with anything, any kind of communication to another human that's being viewed and ingested by a human needs to have some kind of human touch to it. And I think we have not gotten to the point where you get really good communication in a way that humans can do it yet. And I think we shouldn't try to outsource that. It's like also the creative fun part of being a human, right? Being able to communicate. I mean, that's such a wonderful part of being human. And, you know, the relationships you build through communication, whether it's written or verbal or video or whatever it is, right? Yeah, I really don't think we should lose that element. I'm also wondering if you guys have an opinion on the upstream work that has to happen for TA, because historically when I was working in you know, people teams, there was a lot of problems with, like, you know, TA was always like fighting to, you know, either, you know, with hiring managers around like, oh, this candidate's great, and they're like, oh no, that's not what I want, and all this upfront work around what do you actually need and what are you actually looking for. Do you think that's something that AI can do, or is that something like really human? I feel like it's something that can be optimized by AI, but I feel like there's a lot of work still to be done by recruiters to understand what is it that we need with the hiring manager. I think, Matthias, you mentioned that kind of hiring manager recruiter relationship is really important, and that stakeholder management. What are your thoughts on this? Where this upstream work, how important is it? Is it something that AI can do, not do?
If you allow me,
yeah, go.
You want to go, Matthias? Oh, yeah. If you allow me to say it on this point, so and funny, by the way, if anybody's in Germany and going to We Are Developers, I'm doing a talk about this. I wanted to plug this in.
Everyone, come to
I'm
Berlin.
doing a keynote there, and it's called "You Can't Automate Trust," and it's about this topic. So going back to the previous question you asked, which is, you know, what will TA look like in the future, or what are they going to focus on? There's a lot of things that you obviously can automate, and I'm not going to repeat what everybody said, but agreeing with everything, you know, a big part of sourcing, scheduling, all of that little admin things that can be easily automated. And then the remaining 20-30%, that's what will be kind of enlarged for a talent acquisition partner or a recruiter, where they really can kind of double down on the idea of partnership, which is what a recruiter should have always been, and not just the operational order taker or whatever you want to call it. I think AI, like you said, Jessie, AI will definitely help, or automation tools, I like to call it that. They will definitely help with that, freeing you for doing more important things, which are difficult to have AI involved in them. And I think we covered them already, which is, you know, being that trust partner to your business, understanding genuinely why do we recruit in that certain business, being a subject matter expert, understanding, do we even need to hire, or like, is it a hiring problem, or is it not? Maybe we don't even need to hire. It's just being an advisor to your business. That's what recruiters should be kind of moving towards and progressing towards, with having all of that other admin stuff that used to take most of our time now being automated, and you know, having a huge help and push from automation and AI tools. That's what I really want talent acquisition to grow into, is to become, like I said, advisors. I always say that being an AI powered talent advisor, that's what you should be. That's what I have been trying to focus on for the past 4 years in my own role and in the organizations I work in, is to transform recruiters from just being a recruiter who fills seats because he's been or she's been told to fill a seat, to understanding why do we need to fill that seat before we even having that seat empty in the first place. So I think that's kind of the upstream, like you said, and that's where I see talent acquisition professionals going or moving towards. Guys, what do you think?
Amen.
Amen. Good.
Hallelujah.
If we go one step back, and I think in order to free up the time for recruiters, I think what is really, really important and not so much talked about by leveraging the potential of AI is that we need a framework, a foundation that exists to really then leverage all of the potential technology solutions that we have. And so many times I see people struggling with this, like, oh, everybody has their own hiring process. No, there's no streamlined data point. There's no robust data infrastructure. We are not getting all the cues now. I think it's even worse that AI is capable of fixing fragmented data in order to prepare a dashboard, but you then don't solve the root cause problem, like who puts in the data for you. These are your recruiters, and they need a clear guidance of if you have multiple organizations or like multiple roles or bigger organizations, right? We need to have an agreement on the philosophy, on the framework of how we go about it. And if that exists, then you can really leverage and go to the next level. And so many times I see people like fixing small broken problems, but AI cannot fix your hiring problems or hiring process for you. AI can just, enhance your process. And I think this is really, really important for people to understand. I mean, let's go back to the root cause of this is recruiter is not something you can study on university. There's no shared alignment of what this profession actually should look like. There are maybe some global best practices, but in the end, most of the time people are like lonely wolves and fighters to, fix it whenever we can for our companies. And if we would have such a framework or such a guidelines, practices, policies, philosophies, then I think this is the moment when you have that. Everything else will be a piece of cake, I think. And then you can wisely say, where do I want to save certain time in my day-to-day work. Yeah.
I think that's a really good approach. Actually, I did a report recently that you contributed to. Who would have thought? Where we asked 25 of the top EU leaders in TA and HR around, AI transformation and change, and what are the core things that they're seeing in-house around successful transformation. And it always starts with understand how you want the process to look, understand the basics and the foundations, and then build AI into optimizing and enhancing on top of that. And like you said, Matthias, everyone's, got a tool, they're throwing it on top, and really the vendors push us. Remember, we're in control. And I think that's what I think is really important that everyone should take away. We're actually in the control seat. We're the buyers. We decide. You don't need the next best shiny tool yet. Think internally, get your people aligned. It's a human business at the end of the day. Process alignment, understanding how people operate, where data goes. This is all people stuff we need to do. We need to train, we need to learn, we need to have structure around that. And I think we skip that step, not just in TA, also in all the other HR functions, also in other parts of the business, and I think we're trying to scoot around the fact that we have a lot of other work that was existing and problems that were existing in business. And now AI is just amplifying that. So
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting what you said there. I have a final question that I think is quite interesting. If we're thinking about the tech that's out there, are we seeing it take over? Like, are we seeing it take over more than what you think we should? Like the future, are we seeing a future where we're going in the wrong direction right now? And how do we stop going in that direction? What do you recommend? And you know what, actually, I'd love to hear from you guys. I wonder if we could do it. I wonder if we need a visual for this that we could do afterwards. But where along the end-to-end journey, you just talk about your end-to-end journey, maybe high level, where would you put AI leading with human, obviously checking, versus human-led or human solely? Because we talked about it, but if we think about end-to-end, where would you, like, if you can run through and be like, all right, first stage is this, it's going to be human-led, it's going to be AI supported. Can each of you run through that? Because I feel like that will answer how we should be doing things and whether or not the tech, right, will be taking over. Where will it take over?
I think you technically can have tech in the whole process. It just depends on how you use it and and where kind of the final decision falls into whose lab. So like if I'm just trying to like visualize the full process end to end, like you said, I think I have tech in the whole thing, but it just depends on who pulls the trigger in each step. Like, is it AI or human being that has more weight in each step? But like, I have technology part of the whole process, and I think that's what technically most people have right now.
But are you letting AI lead interviews, for instance? No.
No.
Okay.
Hell no.
So are we letting AI lead job description
Sure.
creation?
Yeah, I have that right. Like we're building something now, which is a custom gem that is trained on company voice, EVP, yada yada yada, everything, and even the job families and everything, because it takes people about a good 20-30 minutes to write one job description and kind of do all the full iterations. Now you can just go there and say, hey, I want a X job in X job family with X career level, and then boom, you get it in a second, at least as a first base. You never use that. You have to send it to the hiring manager and then do that iteration. It saves you the good 15-20 minutes in the beginning that you used to waste on looking at other companies and seeing what they write, and then looking at a website outside. And that especially works also for companies that do not have a historical JD bank. Or it's just things keep changing, which I think the past year, all job descriptions kind of changed in a way. So yeah, I'll probably use it in that stage. Sorry, I took a long time in that.
No, I think this only works because you have this database, right? So you have like already a clear EVP stated, which is fed into the system, your career levels and so on. And that's, I think, very important, because in that way, I don't see it as AI is leading. I see it as human is leading, but AI is executing on it. So you have feed in like how it's supposed to look like and what information it should take, but how to make it, polished and nice and write it out. That's where AI is actually coming into play. So that's why I was thinking, like, is AI, or should AI lead? I don't believe so. I believe AI should execute, but the human should be always leading. So it should, even if you take the entire process, sure, AI could do everything. AI could do interviews and coordination and so on. Other topic if it should so, but the brain, the top of it, should be the human, the recruiter, who is setting up the process, who is setting up the standards, who is thinking of, okay, what are the stages? How do I want to how do I want the candidate to experience this journey? And then think of, where do I have to come in place and where do I not have to come in place, and map this out. And then think of delegation, like what can you delegate to AI and what are you keeping for yourself? Because you know that you will, it will be on a better quality, it will bring better results if you do it as a human being.
Yeah, but I think it will always be that case. Like, it will always be an executioner, because I think we covered this earlier on. We said it's as good as you prompt it. So if you give it a shit prompt, it will give you shit results. If you don't give it a prompt, it will not work at all. So it will always be in that case that you guide it, you tell it what to do, and then it will do what it does. That's why I always say it's an automation tool. There are obviously some agentic tools that kind of just operates on their own. I don't think we're there in recruitment. At least I don't know that we have an agentic type of tool in recruitment. I know one ATS, I'm not going to drop the name, but there is one, and it's still in like beta phase. It's just started. But maybe you guys know other tools than I am, but I think it's always been that case that you prompt it, it does what you want. If your prompt is garbage or if your prompt is biased, it will give you biased and garbage results.
Yeah, I think, going back to your question, Jessie, I think the part which I would not even let AI touch it to a certain extent is the part when you find someone and you're in the offer process and you're pitching and you really ask questions. Like, I think we need to maybe look at this in terms of percentages. Like, there should never be an AI process or AI recruiting process that has 0 to 30 or 40% of human interaction. Like, maybe it should be, a minimum of 30% human interaction, or 50, I don't know, depending a little bit of how you design the touch points here. But in the end, I think the offer process and, those questions, and when it comes to relocation or other topics, these are emotional topics. These are things where people people's life depend on the next decision, and there you need really that human element, and maybe also sometimes the promise. Let's go back. You cannot put everything into a contract, but like you be like, hey, we talked about this, and I promise you we're going to support you and help you and do this and that, and you take the word of that person for someone to relocate, because back in the days where relocation was still a very much of a thing, you could see the people who were relocated were much more bought into the mission and the company, and it was not just this, oh yeah, I'm just changing the job, and yeah, next year I have another job because I got a better offer, right? I mean, that's not the market at the minute, but I do think that clearly this offer phase and this, pitching and helping and finalizing this and supporting people along the journey when they then first start, I think this is the part where human interaction is very much needed.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's funny because we, at some point, we partly say like tech will be across the whole end-to-end process. So it's almost like it's not where not to use AI, but almost where to amplify human. Rather, like where do we amplify the human effort, right? And I think we've got some good tips from this, where to do that. There's one final thing someone asked in the questions that I think is a good one to drop in. What's one mistake organizations are currently making in AI in hiring that you think they'll regret in the next 2 to 3 years? Where are we going to say, like, why did we do that? I think that's an interesting one.
I have an answer, but I think that gets me in trouble. So do you see this as well, that a lot of people and a lot of organizations are so obsessed with AI literacy and, putting AI skills into the performance reviews and so on and so on? I get the point, you want to look from the outside as an AI-enabled company. You want to actually also make sure that your people have enough expertise to, make sure that they constantly work on AI use cases or develop themselves into AI-driven experts. But I wonder if this will not backfire. Why? Because let's be honest, like there are no AI experts. And what does an expert mean? We are all like trialing and, making sure we kind of experimenting what works best and what is the best return or the best value add, let's put it like this. And when you put this into performance reviews, how much can I speak for my team to say, well, but you are an AI literacy expert from a senior perspective versus maybe a director versus maybe an intern? Like, are we really that savvy? This is my question. Are we that savvy to judge people or assess people, not judge, assess people based on how they use AI to then say, this is the outcome of your performance review because you have used AI in this way or the other? I mean, we might be, yeah. Maybe this is something that you all say, yes, this is, but I see this trend happening more and more often, and I don't know if a candidate suddenly becomes better in their job and to which extent, because yes, everybody plays around with AI and maybe has established already use cases. Great, but how granular are we going with this? How granular can we be to then say, this person does not get a promotion. This person does not get a salary increase. This person needs to go because they are not full on board.
Interesting.
I think we should train people definitely on AI literacy because it speaks for efficiency within the company. Because if you're not using it at all, you're missing out on opportunity to work faster on a higher level. But maybe we should not expect them to come up with that by themselves. So I would also not maybe put it in the performance review, but I would definitely, as a company, try to push for it, because if you're using it correctly and you're finding use cases for it, as Mahmoud is doing, for instance, in his cases, he will find a way how to make things better and faster eventually. And this will pay into the company growth and also in the how fast they're moving forward, right? So I do believe that it makes sense to push for that skill within the company, But yeah, I agree. It doesn't make sense to say like, oh, you didn't do this and that, and then you wouldn't get promoted. I think that would be a bit too harsh.
Yeah.
Mahmoud, we've got 2 minutes before you have to drop. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I just agree with both. I'm trying to squeeze my head right now if I'm also think of something else that we would like regret in the next couple of years. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I have the answer for it. So I would agree with Matthias and Mina.
Interesting. I think we're going to regret not looking into. I think we're going to regret some of the vibe coding we're doing and how insecure it is. And I think we're going to regret. And I think we're going to regret not giving the organization support through this process, and potentially some of the tooling that we're expecting people to use. I don't know if we should be using. I'm all for HR tech. That's my whole business. Helping people understand HR tech, but I think we're going to regret the speed at which we're moving and some of the security and data side of things that we're just missing. So that's my 2 cents. But this has been a great chat. I think we've found out quite a lot about where we think we could, but also not obviously have AI, and where we can amplify human reach in this process, where we think that the humans need to stay, and it's really about the relationship. It's the human to human, end to end, making sure that whole process has a human, you feel trusted, you feel comfortable, and that will be probably a dial different in every company, how much of that. But at the end of the day, I don't see that it's going to be completely gone. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So thank you very much for all your input, everyone. Great to have you here. Until next time, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thanks for all the questions. We more or less answered most of the questions as we went through, so I didn't call them out. But please make sure to subscribe to the next one that's coming up. Make sure to check out everyone on LinkedIn. I'll drop them in the chat. And that is all, folks. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Mina, Matthias, Mahmoud. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess.